All right, so you're curious about this let them theory, huh? You've seen excerpts from Mel Robbins' new book, The Let Them Theory, and you're trying to figure out if this is something that's worth your time.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that this book really emphasizes practical application. She's not just giving you like theories and stuff to think about. It's very much like here are actual tools and things that you can implement in your daily life.
Okay, so less theory and more action. I
Exactly.
like that. But what is this whole let them theory about anyway?
Sure. So the core idea is that you actually gain more control over your own life, your relationships, by letting go of things that you can't control, and especially other people.
It does seem a little counterintuitive. So how does that actually
Right.
work?
Well, Robbins breaks it down into two parts: let them and let me. And she uses this analogy of a seesaw to explain it. I mean, imagine you're stuck on the ground because someone much heavier is on the other end. Let them is like you pushing off the ground. You're acknowledging you can't control their weight. You're giving them the freedom to be themselves.
So you're not trying to force them off the seesaw.
Right.
You're accepting that, okay, they're there.
Right, exactly. And that's what allows you to rise up on your side of the seesaw, which is the let me part.
Yeah.
It's about shifting your focus to what you can control, your responses, actions, boundaries, all of that.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this could be useful, but do you have an example of how this let them let me thing plays out in, a real life situation?
Sure. So Robin shares a story about feeling really hurt and left out when some of her friends went on a trip without her.
Okay, yeah.
Initially, she was stuck in that, why wasn't I invited
Yeah.
mindset, trying to figure out what she did wrong. But by using let them, she realized her friends were just, living their lives, making choices that work for them. And it wasn't, a reflection on her necessarily.
So she stopped taking it personally and let go of that need to control
Exactly.
their decision.
Exactly. And then Lemmy kicked in.
Mm-hmm.
She decided to be proactive and plan her own fun activities. And she also realized that she'd been neglecting some other friendships. So, she made an effort to reconnect. Instead of like dwelling on what she couldn't control, she took action in areas where she had power.
Yeah, that's a great example of how shifting your focus can actually empower you. It's not about, ignoring your feelings, but it's about like channeling them into something that's more constructive. Now I'm curious, how does let them work in like those everyday situations that just drive us crazy? Like waiting in a ridiculously long line or dealing
Mm.
with a frustrating coworker.
Yeah, I mean, think of let them as like a mental reset button for your stress response.
Yeah.
The moment you feel that frustration rising, that urge to like, control the situation, you just say to yourself, let them.
Like you're acknowledging that you can't control the cashier's speed or the fact that your coworker always forgets to refill the coffee pot.
Exactly. It's about detaching from the need to control things that are um, honestly beyond your control.
Okay, so you say let them. And then what? Do you just stand there and passively fume?
No, not at all. That's where the let me comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Take a deep breath and you ask yourself, what can I control in this situation? Maybe it's, put on your headphones, listening to music while you wait in line. Maybe it's gently reminding your coworker about the coffee and suggesting you both take turns refilling it.
So it's about accepting what you can't change and taking action in areas where you do have power.
Right.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
It's about shifting from feeling like a victim of your circumstances
Yeah.
to actually becoming the architect of your experience.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, it's resonating. I can see how this could be like a game changer in so many areas of life. But what about something like a career? Let's say you're feeling stuck in a job and you're waiting for that promotion that never seems to come. How would let them apply there?
Well, Robbins is pretty blunt about that. She says, stop trying to control the promotion process. You can't force your boss to recognize your value or, create a position for you.
So you're letting them make their own decisions, even if you don't agree with them.
Right. But it's not about giving up. It's about shifting your energy to what you can control. Update your resume, start networking, explore other opportunities. Let me take charge of my career path.
Was instead of sitting around feeling resentful, you're taking action and you're creating your own opportunities.
Yeah.
I love that. It's about empowerment. Now, family dynamics can be incredibly tricky. We've all got those relatives with like strong opinions and expectations. How does let them work when you're navigating those family relationships?
Yeah, I mean, this is where she introduces a really useful concept called frame of reference. It's the idea that everyone's opinions and actions are really shaped by their own unique life experiences.
So it's not necessarily about like being right or wrong.
Right.
It's about understanding where they're coming from.
Exactly. So she tells this story about her own mother disapproving of her future husband simply because of where he lived. At first, Robbins took it personally. But then she realized her mom's disapproval was stemming from this fear of losing her daughter, not from any, like judgment about the husband himself.
So it wasn't about the husband at all. It was about the mother's own fears and
Exactly.
anxieties.
Yeah, and once Robbins understood her mom's frame of reference, she could approach the situation with more empathy and compassion.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you have to agree with them, but it can help you understand their behavior
Yep.
and respond in a more constructive way. That's really powerful. I'm already seeing how this whole let them concept can shift your perspective in like so many ways. Now, let's talk about a big one, comparison. I think we've all fallen into that trap of comparing ourselves to others and then just feeling inadequate.
Ugh, comparison is a thief of joy, that's for sure. Robbins shares this really poignant story about her daughter struggling with comparing herself to her sister.
Okay.
Her younger sister was naturally gifted in singing, had a different body type, and it really, like, impacted her self-esteem.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that feeling of like never measuring up.
Right. But Robbins emphasizes that most things in life are actually achievable with, hard work, dedication, patience. The problem with comparison is we're often comparing apples and oranges. We're focusing on someone else's highlight reel and ignoring our own unique strengths and progress.
So instead of comparing ourselves to, other people, we should be focusing on becoming the best versions of ourselves.
Exactly. And she even, like, reframes comparison as a potential teacher. Seeing other people's success can actually show us what's possible and inspire us to set, bigger goals for ourselves.
It's about using that inspiration to fuel our own journey,
Yes.
not to like tear ourselves down.
Exactly. She talks about this interior designer, Molly, who was constantly comparing herself to other designers that she felt were, more successful and more talented. But then she saw one of her, like, rivals, essentially,
Mhm.
doing all the things she knew she should be doing. Marketing herself online, building her brand, networking.
So instead of feeling threatened, she used that observation as motivation.
Right. It wasn't about copying. It was about realizing if they could do it, she could too.
I love that. It's about turning comparison into a catalyst for action. Now, this is where it gets interesting to me because Robbins actually talks about how adult friendships are kind of like a game of musical chairs.
Hmm.
We're constantly, shifting, changing, moving, and it can be really hard to maintain those like close-knit friendships that we had when we were younger.
She calls it the great scattering of adult life.
Hmm.
Jobs change, people relocate, priorities shift, and those friendships that were once so effortless, they just require, like, more intention, more effort.
And sometimes those friendships naturally fade. It's not always a bad thing. It's just a part of life.
Exactly. She talks about the three pillars of friendship: proximity, timing, and energy, and how all of those, like, evolve over time.
Mhm.
We're not necessarily seeing our friends as often. We're at different stages of life. Our energy might not align in the same way that it used to.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's not always personal. It's just a natural evolution of relationships.
Right. And she even, like, shares her own struggles with feeling left out of her friend group and how it ultimately led to, like, some personal growth for her.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that sometimes, like, letting go of friendships can actually create space for new connections.
Okay, so we've acknowledged that adult friendships can be challenging, but how do we use let them to like create and maintain meaningful connections? Because I think a lot of people, myself included, feel like it just gets harder as you get older.
Well, one of her biggest pieces of advice is to give it a year.
Yeah.
When you're in a new place, a new phase of life, it just takes time to build those connections. Don't expect
Well,
to find your tribe overnight.
so be patient, give it time. But what about taking action? What can we do to be more proactive in building those friendships?
She emphasizes the importance of letting me go first. Don't wait for people to reach out to you. Take the initiative. Introduce yourself. Extend invitations. Be the one to make the effort.
I mean, that takes courage, right?
It does. But think about it this way. Most people are just as nervous about making new friends as you are. They're waiting for someone to, like, make the first move. Why not let it be you?
I love that. It's about like taking ownership of your social life, right?
Right.
And recognizing that you have the power to create the connections that you crave.
Exactly. And she backs it up with um, a personal story about moving to a new town and feeling completely isolated. Instead of wallowing in that loneliness, she decided to just be proactive. Started conversations with people at the coffee shop, joined local groups, put herself out there.
I'm guessing it worked.
It did. She built a whole new community for herself by being willing to take that first step. It's a reminder that we don't have to wait for friendships to happen to us. We can actually actively create them.
Now, I think we've all been in situations where we desperately want someone to, like, change their behavior, whether it's a friend, a family member, or a partner. But it's so frustrating when our attempts to, like, help or offer advice, they just backfire.
Well, Robbins addresses this head on. She says that pressuring someone to change often has the opposite effect. Creates resistance, defensiveness, power struggles.
Okay, so nagging and lecturing are out. But how do we use let them to approach these situations in a healthier way?
Well, she introduces a framework called the ABC loop, which stands for apologize, back off, and celebrate.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this ABC loop.
And so the first step is apologize. It's not about taking blame. It's about acknowledging that our previous attempts to influence their behavior, maybe haven't been so helpful.
So you're creating a more open space for conversation.
Exactly. Then you move to B, back off. This is where the let them really comes into play.
Right.
You're giving them the space to make their own choices,
Yeah,
even if you don't agree with them.
that can be really tough, especially when you care about them and you can see them making what you perceive as, like, mistakes.
Yeah, it is. But Robbins emphasizes that people are more likely to change when it comes from their own internal motivation, not from external pressure.
So instead of trying to control them, you're trusting them to find their own way.
Right. And the final step, C, is to celebrate. You acknowledge and reinforce any positive steps that they take, no matter how small. You're creating that positive, supportive environment where change actually feels possible.
So it's about encouraging and supporting them without trying to control the outcome.
Right.
Now, I want to get into a really sensitive topic. What about those situations where someone we love is struggling with something serious like addiction or mental health issues? It's so hard to know how to help, and it's easy to just feel helpless.
This is where let them takes on like a whole new level of meaning, and it can be one of the most difficult applications of the theory. Robbins emphasizes that you can't force someone to get better. You can't want it for them more than they want it for themselves.
So what can we do? Because it feels wrong to just stand by and watch someone you love struggle.
Well, she stresses the importance of setting boundaries, even when it's hard. It might mean, refusing to enable their behavior or stepping back and allowing them to experience the natural consequences of their actions.
That sounds so counterintuitive, but I'm starting to understand the logic. It's about, like, letting them hit rock bottom so they can find their own motivation to change.
Right, exactly. And she shares a personal story about her daughter struggling with anxiety and how she inadvertently made it worse by allowing her to sleep in her room every night. She thought she was being, comforting and supportive, but in reality, she was kind of shielding her daughter from facing her fears.
That's a powerful example. It shows how, like, our attempts to help can sometimes backfire and actually enable the behavior that we're trying to change.
Exactly. And she also talks about her husband's brother refusing to bail him out financially when his business was failing. It was a tough decision, but it ultimately forced her husband to, take responsibility for his mistakes and find his own solution.
It's that tough love approach. It's about having faith in their ability to overcome the challenge, even if it means letting them struggle in the short term.
Right.
Now, this wouldn't be a Mel Robbins conversation without talking about love and dating, right?
Of course not.
The dating world can be a battlefield, especially these days. How does let them apply to finding love?
Well, she encourages people to be authentic, vulnerable, to let them see the real you and let them make their own choices, even if it means rejection.
So no more pretending to be someone you're not, or trying to, like, mold yourself into what you think someone else wants.
Right. It's about letting go of that need to control the outcome and trusting that the right person will be drawn to your true self. And she has this great line. She says, if they like you, you'll know. If they don't, you'll be confused.
That is so true. And if you're constantly trying to decipher their signals, it's probably a sign that they're just not that into you.
Exactly. And Robbins emphasizes the importance of choosing the right relationship, not chasing the wrong ones. It's about being discerning, knowing your worth, and refusing to settle for, these lukewarm or confusing connections.
It's about recognizing that you deserve a love that feels good, a love that's reciprocal, a love that supports your growth and your happiness.
Exactly. And when it comes to navigating long-term relationships, Robbins acknowledges that it's not always, smooth sailing. People rarely change fundamentally. So if there's a recurring issue that's causing friction, it's time for some like honest reflection.
It's about having those difficult conversations and deciding, like, can I accept this? Or is it a deal breaker?
Right. And if you do decide to address the issue, she recommends using that ABC loop again.
Yeah.
Have an open and honest conversation, express your needs and concerns, but then back off and give them space to respond. Observe their behavior. See if there's any genuine effort to change. If not, it's decision time.
Deal with it or exit the relationship.
Right.
That's a tough choice.
It is.
But sometimes it's the healthiest one.
Yeah, and Robbins is a big believer in choosing happiness. And sometimes that means walking away from a relationship that's no longer serving you, even if it's painful.
It's about recognizing that you deserve to be in a relationship that brings you joy, not
Yeah.
one that drains your energy and leaves you feeling depleted.
Right, and she offers some great advice for, surviving heartbreak. Let them go. Give yourself time and space to grieve, focus on self-care, and surround yourself with supportive friends and activities that, bring you joy.
It's about reclaiming your power, remembering your worth, and trusting that you will find love again, and maybe even a love that's stronger and more fulfilling than anything you've experienced before.
One thing that strikes me as we're talking about these tough situations is that let them is not about being passive.
That's an important distinction. I think it would be easy to misinterpret that.
It's not about giving up or suppressing your needs. It's about a strategic shift in focus.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that true power actually comes from within.
It's about owning your strengths, acknowledging your limitations, and choosing to focus on the things you can control, your own growth and happiness.
Right. It's about letting go of the illusion of control over others so you can gain real control over your own life,
Yeah.
your, reactions and your choices.
That's such a powerful insight. I think that's a great place to pause for now. We've covered a lot of ground, and there's still so much more to explore in Robin's book. In part 2 of this deep dive, we'll delve into even more practical strategies and insights from the let them theory.
Yeah.
But for now, take some time to reflect on what we've discussed. What resonated with you? What one area of your life could benefit from a little, let them let me action? We'll be back soon to continue the conversation.
One thing that keeps coming up for me as we delve deeper into let them is this kind of universal human desire for control.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? Like feeling in control gives us this sense of security and predictability.
Totally.
But I'm starting to see how that that illusion of control, especially when it comes to relationships, can really backfire.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
The more we try to control others, the more resistance and conflict we actually we create.
Yeah.
It's like trying to hold sand in your fist.
Okay.
The tighter you squeeze, the more slips through your fingers.
So how do we like loosen our grip on that need to control?
Well, Robbins uses this great example from her own life. She talks about her son's prom night.
Okay.
And, with her daughter's prom, she had planned everything perfectly. The dinner reservations, the transportation, the photos, all of that. But with her son, it was a completely different story. He and his friends were determined to do things their own way, which involved skipping the fancy dinner, getting caught in a downpour, and going to this tiny taco place in their formal wear.
And I'm guessing her initial reaction was to try to take control and steer them back to her carefully crafted plan.
Of course.
Yeah.
Her instinct was to fix the situation, to make
Yeah.
sure everything went according to her vision. But then she had this realization that she was fighting a losing battle.
Yeah.
She couldn't control the weather. She couldn't force the teenagers to follow her plan, and she was just making herself miserable in the process.
So what did she do?
She surrendered. She let go. She gave her son some money for tacos and watched him and his date happily run out into the rain.
Wow.
And in that moment, something shifted for her. She realized that trying to control everything was not only exhausting,
Yeah.
but it was also robbing her of the joy of the experience.
What a powerful lesson. It's about accepting that sometimes things won't go according to plan, and that's okay.
It is. And what's interesting is that when you let go of that need to control the outcome, you actually create space for things to unfold in ways you might never have imagined.
Right.
And often those unexpected detours, lead to the most memorable experiences.
That reminds me of something you said earlier about shifting from a mindset of control to a mindset of acceptance.
Yes.
It sounds like that prom night was kind of a turning point for Robbins and really embracing that shift.
It definitely was. And she emphasizes that this let them approach isn't just for, these big life-changing events. It's also for those like everyday annoyances
Oh, yeah.
that can easily derail our mood.
Okay, give me one of those everyday scenarios where let them can come in handy.
Okay, sure. She talks about being stuck in, a long checkout line at a garden center.
Ah, I've been there.
You know that feeling, right? You're impatient. You've got other things to do, and you're internally like, fuming at the slow cashier.
Oh, I can feel my blood pressure rising just thinking about it.
Right. But instead of letting that frustration like ruin her day, Robbins reminded herself to, let them.
Ah.
She realized the cashier wasn't intentionally, trying to slow her down.
Right.
It was just the situation.
So she detached from that need to control the pace of the checkout line.
Exactly. And then she used let me to actually choose a different response.
Hmm.
Instead of focusing on the weight, she shifted her attention to the beautiful plants
Okay.
that were surrounding her. She even like started a conversation with the person behind her in line.
Oh, nice.
Those few extra minutes in line. They didn't actually make a difference in her day, but her response to the situation made all the difference in her experience.
That's a great example of how let them can help like reclaim our power in those seemingly small but often frustrating moments. Instead of, being a victim of our circumstances, we choose how we react. Now, I'm curious about how this applies to more complex situations, like dealing with differing opinions,
Yeah.
especially in today's world where like everything feels so politically charged.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Robbins acknowledges that it's so easy to get caught up in heated
Oh,
debates
yeah.
and feel this urge to convince others of our point of view.
Yeah.
But she reminds us that we can't control other people's beliefs.
Yeah.
We can share our perspective.
Right.
We can, engage in respectful dialogue.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we have to let go of the need to change their minds.
That's a hard one for me. I tend to get pretty passionate about things I believe in,
Sure.
but I'm starting to see how like trying to force my views on someone else, it usually just creates more division.
Yeah, totally. She tells this story about, encountering someone with opposing political views
Okay.
and feeling that, that familiar surge of wanting to like argue or, correct them or whatever. But then she took a step back and asked herself, what would be gained by engaging in this debate?
And I'm guessing the answer was probably nothing but frustration and resentment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So she chose to, let them have their opinion. She could still choose to engage in, a respectful conversation, but she didn't feel the need to like win the argument or change their mind.
It's about choosing your battles wisely and recognizing that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is just walk away.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And sometimes let them means, choosing to focus your energy on connecting with people who do share your values and perspectives.
Right.
It's about building community and finding support rather than, engaging in battles that drain your energy and lead to nowhere.
This is making me think about another area where let them could be like incredibly helpful, overcoming the trap of comparison. We live in a world where we're like constantly bombarded with images of other people's, seemingly perfect lives.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to fall into that spiral of feeling inadequate.
Robbins calls it the torture of comparison.
Okay.
And she stresses that it's a game we can never win.
Yeah.
We're all on different paths with different strengths, different challenges, different timelines.
Right.
You comparing yourself to others is like comparing apples to oranges.
It's about remembering that everyone is fighting their own battles.
Yes.
Even if they're not, posting about it on social media.
Exactly. She shares a story about her daughter struggling with comparing herself to her younger sister who's naturally gifted in singing and has a different body type.
Okay.
And it was a heartbreaking reminder that even within families, comparison can be, a source of pain and insecurity.
I think we all have those insecurities, those things that we compare ourselves to others about. But I'm curious, like, what's the antidote? How do we break free from that comparison trap?
Well, she emphasizes that most things in life are actually achievable with, hard work, dedication, and patience.
Okay.
The problem with comparison is that we're often like comparing our beginning to someone else's, middle or end.
Oh yeah.
We're not seeing the full picture, the struggles they've faced, the effort they've put in, all of that.
So it's about focusing on our own journey, our own progress, not on where we stand in relation to someone else.
Exactly. And instead of seeing comparison as something negative, she encourages us to reframe it as a potential teacher.
So how do we do that? How do we turn comparison into like a positive force?
Well, she talks about this interior designer, Molly, who was constantly comparing herself to other designers who, she felt were more successful, more talented.
Mm.
But then she saw one of her like rivals essentially doing all the things she knew she should be doing, marketing herself online, showcasing her work, building a brand, all of that.
So instead of like feeling threatened or discouraged, she used that observation as motivation.
Exactly. It wasn't about, copying.
Right.
It was about realizing if they could do it, she could too.
Yeah.
And it sparked a fire in her to step up her game and take those actions that she had been putting off.
That's such a great example of how comparison, when viewed through the right lens, can actually be a catalyst for growth and action.
Totally.
It's about shifting from like a mindset of scarcity to a mindset of abundance.
Yes.
Recognizing that there's room for everyone to succeed.
Absolutely. And that's a powerful message to carry with us, especially as we navigate the complexities of adult friendships.
Mm.
One of Robin's key observations is that as we get older, those close-knit friendships we had when we were younger, they become more challenging to maintain.
Yeah, she calls it the great scattering of adult life.
Yeah.
We move, we change jobs, we get married, we have kids, and those friendships that were once like so effortless,
Yeah.
they require more intention
Or effort.
and effort.
Yeah. She breaks down the three pillars of friendship, proximity, timing, and energy.
Sure.
And she explains how they all like evolve over time. We're not necessarily seeing our friends as often. We're at different stages of life,
Hmm.
and our energy might not align in the same way it used to.
I think it's comforting to hear that this is like a normal part of adult life.
Yeah, totally.
It's not that we've done something wrong or that our friendships are failing. It's just the nature of things changing.
Robbins even like normalizes the fading of some friendships. She says it's not always personal.
Right.
Sometimes people, grow apart. Their paths diverge, their interests change.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
And she even shares a story about her own struggles with, feeling left out of her friend group and how it ultimately led to personal growth.
Yes, it's a reminder that sometimes, like, letting go of a friendship can actually be necessary to make space for new connections, for people who are better aligned with where we are in our lives.
Yeah. But even though, adult friendships can be more challenging, Robbins emphasizes that we can still create meaningful connections. It just requires like a shift in mindset and a willingness to be proactive.
Absolutely.
Okay, so how do we do that? How do we use let them
Mhm.
to build those connections in a world that often feels so isolating?
Well, one of her biggest pieces of advice is to give it a year. When you're in a new place or a new
Yeah.
phase of life, it just takes time to build those connections. Don't expect to find your tribe, overnight. Be patient, be persistent, and trust that the right people will come into your life at the right time.
So patience is key.
You
But
got it.
what about taking action? What can we do to be more proactive in creating those friendships?
Well, she emphasizes the importance of letting me go first. Don't wait for people to, reach out to you. Take the
Right.
initiative, introduce yourself, extend invitations, be the one to make the effort.
That can be scary putting yourself out there like that.
It can be, but think about it this way. Most people are just as nervous about making new friends as you are.
Right.
They're waiting for someone to, like, make the first move. Yeah. Why not let it be you?
I love that. It's about like taking ownership of your social life and recognizing that you have the power to create the connections you crave.
Exactly. And she backs this up with a personal story about moving to a new town and feeling completely isolated.
Mm.
Instead of wallowing in that loneliness, she decided to just be proactive. Started conversations with people at the coffee shop, joined local groups, put herself out there.
And I'm guessing it worked.
It absolutely did. She built a whole new community for herself by being willing to take that first step.
As we wrap up this deep dive into the let them theory, what's clear to me is this. It's not just a set of, tools or techniques. It's a fundamental shift in perspective.
It's about recognizing that true power doesn't come from controlling others or forcing outcomes.
Yeah.
It comes from surrendering to the flow of life, embracing the unknown, trusting in our own ability to navigate whatever comes our way.
It's about letting go of the things we can't control, other people, outcomes,
Yeah.
circumstances, and focusing on what we can, our responses, our actions, our choices. It's about saying, let them to the external world and let me to our own inner world.
It's about creating a life that feels authentic, fulfilling, and aligned with our deepest values.
Mhm.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Yeah.
And it requires constant awareness, practice, and a willingness to let go of old patterns and embrace a new way of being.
So as you go back to your own life, your own relationships, your own challenges and triumphs, we encourage you to ask yourself, where can I practice let them today? What can I let go of? What can I embrace? And how can I use this newfound freedom to create a life that feels, more spacious, more joyful, more authentically you. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope it's sparked some new insights and inspired you to embrace the power of letting go.